I'm Oleg Shmura.
I am Dr. Ben Andrew.
My name's Cody Anderson.
My name is Katie Sandlin.
My name is Andrew Lennox.
My name is Nick Hand.
I'm Riley Ratcliffe.
My name is Jonathan Cammons. I oversaw cybersecurity for the VA.gov website, and about a third of USDS, including me, were fired last week. Without people like me ensuring that VA.gov is secure, the private financial and healthcare data of Americans' veterans is at risk of being stolen, sold to the highest bidder, and used to harm people.
We are standing in Yosemite National Park. For the past 10 months, I was the custodial worker here. I picked diapers off the side of the road, toilet paper, beer bottles, cigarette butts, you name it, so you didn't have to see it.
And I served as the Chief of Safety and Emergency Management at the Philadelphia VA. This was a mission-critical role that ensured the health and safety of all those who entered into our facilities.
I used to be a NEPA coordinator for the Wrangell Ranger District of the USDA Forest Service, where I would coordinate environmental review for projects in and around the town of Wrangell, projects that are crucial to the town's economy and its people.
It's a small collection of some of the fired workers throughout our federal government based on Elon Musk's running lie that they don't do anything. As you listen, just be reminded that Musk and Trump don't think any of this is beneficial to the country or your life.
I moved from Alabama to Maryland to start my new job in genomics education and outreach at the National Institutes of Health. My job was to help educate students, teachers, and healthcare providers about genomics to improve patient care and develop the future scientific workforce.
I was a technologist at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for about a year and a half before I was fired last week. We were the ones making sure that you could use payment apps without being constantly scammed, that your sensitive financial data wasn't being collected and shared with shady companies, and that your data wouldn't be leaked in a data breach.
As the only aquatic ecologist at the largest reservoir in the United States, my job was mostly to monitor for water quality for recreational uses, making sure that when people are out boating or swimming, that the water quality is sufficient to keep people healthy.
After leaving the military, I wanted to continue serving my country, and I did so as an administrative officer at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My job was to enable our medical providers, and that meant looking at the hundreds of doctors and the thousands of patients' schedules to make sure that nobody walked through those doors and was not treated. To make sure that we had all the paperwork and credentialing to send those veterans home with the prescription medication that they needed. And we didn't waste a single taxpayer dollar.
For those that overlooked the glaring examples that were right in front of our faces for the past 10 years, these folks are the reality that MAGA's propaganda screams and shouts over, so that you believe their characterizations of people that you've never heard from.
I went into public service because I wanted to use my tech expertise to make an impact. A lot of the time, I was seeing a skill set like mine be used to make more money for big tech companies at the expense of everyday people. And I wanted to try to help level that playing field.
I went into public service because I'm passionate about helping others learn science and to also give back to a country that has given so much to me.
I joined the Park Service because I believe that the national parks are one of the best ways that we can share America with everyone.
I chose public service because my mother worked 30 years for the VA Medical Center in New Orleans. As a kid, I said one day I'll work at the VA.
I got into this job because I'm not in it for the money. I don't make that much money, but what I do believe in is the National Park Service and our mission to protect these beautiful and insanely unique monuments to the rest of the world.
If they offered me my job back tomorrow, I would take it, despite all the chaos and risk. The mission is still there, and I'm still ready to be a part of it.
We're not deep state actors. We're not faceless bureaucrats. I'm a veteran that wants to help veterans. That's why people join the federal service. They do it to help others and serve their country. This is the face of the federal agencies.
So if you let Elon Musk tell it, those former employees sit in a cubicle every day, eating Cheetos and drinking Coke, while getting paid $1 million a year. They toss words and phrases out like DEI hire and unelected bureaucracy that their followers don't know the meanings behind, except that they should hate them without knowing anything about them. And since enough are accepting the dismantling of our workforce that protects us and enhances the country, this administration is taking their purge to the department with the most lethal power, so that once enough people figure it out, violence and suppression will greet him.
President Trump has just fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his top military advisor. He made the announcement on social media. Quoting from his post, "I want to thank General Charles C.Q. Brown for his over 40 years of service to our country, including as our current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and I wish a great future for him and his family." The president went on to say, "Today I'm honored to announce that I'm nominating Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had previously called for General Brown's firing because of his, quote, woke focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. Hegseth, on a radio show last fall said, or a podcast last fall said, first of all, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And he went on to talk about how any general involved with DEI efforts should be fired. Either you're in for war fighting and that's it.
People are pointing out the lack of experience that would normally disqualify Trump's pick to replace General Brown, which is very valid. But it's also pretty impossible to ignore Brown's previous words about his experience as a black person in America.
Commander of Pacific Air Forces, a senior leader in our Air Force, and an African American. Many of you may be wondering what I'm thinking about the current events surrounding the tragic death of George Floyd. I'm thinking about how full I am with emotion, not just for George Floyd, but the many African Americans that have suffered the same fate as George Floyd. And thinking about a history of racial issues and my own experiences that didn't always sing of liberty and equality. I'm thinking about my Air Force career, where I was often the only African American in my squadron, or as a senior officer, the only African American in the room. I'm thinking about the pressure I felt to perform error-free, especially for supervisors I perceived had expected less from me as an African American. I'm thinking about having to represent by working twice as hard to prove their expectations and perceptions of African Americans were invalid. I'm thinking about the airmen who don't have a life similar to mine and don't have to navigate through two worlds. I'm thinking about how these airmen view racism, whether they don't see it as a problem since it doesn't happen to them, or whether they're empathetic. I'm thinking about our two sons. Now we had to prepare them to live in two worlds. Finally, I'm thinking about my historic nomination to be the first African American to serve as the Air Force Chief of Staff. I'm thinking about the African Americans that went before me to make this opportunity possible. I'm thinking about the immense expectations that come with this historic nomination, particularly through the lens of current events plaguing our nation. I'm thinking about how I may have fallen short in my career and will likely continue falling short living up to all those expectations. I'm thinking about how my nomination provides some hope, but it also comes with a heavy burden. That's what I'm thinking about.
So instead of accepting that this is the world that this very serious and very accomplished general was courageous enough to speak out on when he was nominated for the position, too many of us are more uncomfortable with these truths rather than the standard response to avoid fixing it. Instead, this administration is not comfortable with unserious people like Pete Hegseth leading the Department of Defense, while Brown is dismissed as Joint Chief of Staff.
For people who may not know, I mean, they give advice to the military about what is lawful and what isn't. Not surprisingly, there's been some backlash to those who are worried about their removal. One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything that happens in their spots.
Fair to say, Russia attacked unprovoked into Ukraine 3 years ago tomorrow.
Fair to say it's a very complicated situation.